the Grey Hat Beard podcast. Hello and welcome to part 2 of Grey Hat Beard, and this week we're talking about contributing to open source. For those of you watching on YouTube, and if you didn't know, we are on YouTube, check the website greyhatbeard.com for details. You may have noticed we do look slightly different, and the reason is thankfully we're still busy at the moment. So we ran out of time to record on Friday, so we've taken a bit of a delay and re-recording the second part on Sunday, just to make sure we've got all the quality that all of you deserve. So we're going to be talking about contributing to open source. We're going to first kick off with Al's going to talk about why you should do it, what the benefits are, the reason to get involved, and I'm going to go into a little bit of the basics around GitHub and how you can actually get involved, and then Gary's going to talk about what it means managing a repo and how you can be a good contributor as well. So Mr. Hat, do you want to kick off? Why should we bother?
Why should we bother? Very good question. Why should we put our own time into these things? Well, over the years, I think we've all looked for things on Google, Bing, whatever search engine we choose, and we've found solutions. And it might be a code snippet. It might be something that we go, actually, that's just some good advice. What we have now is open source solutions where rather than just having a code snippet, we have fully fledged tools that we can use. So Office PnP has been a very good example of tools that we can go to now and we can go, actually, that has so many benefits for us to use that we just download them and we don't really think about them now because we know that actually it's trusted. Many people in our industry are using them, and so therefore we trust it. So, but it's an open source solution. It's something that it's not created by Microsoft. It's not created by one person. It's created by a community of people. That gives us some comfort that it's being done by experts, but also it means that we can actually participate. So we can actually not only just use the solution, we can also, raise issues. The term, we'll probably come on to that a little later on, isn't necessarily limited to defects, things that don't work. It is feature requests, it is changes, it is improvements. You go to docs.com, you spot a typo. Well, actually, you can raise an issue that says, actually, there's a typo and somebody can fix it. You could go to Grey Hat Beard, our etiquettes repo, and look at that and say, actually, there's something else that I'd like you guys to add.
And we would love you to as well.
Absolutely. And then you can put that in as an issue, and it becomes more of a task list for people to say, actually, these are things that still need to be done. And then ultimately, you can engage and fix an issue. So you can actually add new content in. And I think the benefits of doing that are, not only from a personal perspective of you might be learning things, you might be working with new technology, but also it looks good on the CV. It looks good, if you go for a new job. Oh, well, I actually participate in this open source project. The weekly calls that I know Microsoft hosts, getting logos up there. It's good for organizations. It's good for individuals.
It's a really good point. Yeah.
And also as a personal project, you can do stuff that isn't necessarily your day-to-day work. So you get the benefit of saying, actually, I can show off my skills in a way that is accessible to employers to look at, accessible to peers to help you with, and professionally, it raises your profile really well. So I think there are
just on
many reasons.
On that logos, I think that's a really good one because a lot of people think open source, I have to do it in my own time. My organization will never back it, but there is that capability. Certainly if you're recruiting as a developer, if you've seen that organization's logo around lots of open source stuff, if you've seen them there on that Office Dev PnP, it encourages you that they're going to be doing the right thing. The sort of way they're going to be working a little bit more. So it's not just about the organization wide. I think it's a really good point as well.
And I think, as an organization, if you use these tools, in the same way that as an individual, if you use these tools, then it's right to actually allow people time to contribute back. If we find things that are missing, I want our teams to be able to say, yes, we can fix that. But actually, we're not just fixing it for our own use. We're fixing it as part of the open source project and contributing back in. And I think that's, that's the community responsibility, is to not only use the tools, but also to raise issues and to fix where you can do.
Yeah, I think on that point, it's everyone advancing a particular goal. So the goal for PnP PowerShell originally, when that came about, it was a frustration because the tools were just not there.
Yeah.
Microsoft didn't build a whole, there's the SharePoint Online PowerShell commandlets that Microsoft published, but they're nowhere near as comprehensive as the PnP PowerShell ones. And that, came about because people got together, they were trying to solve a problem, and other people got involved. And it stopped people from reinventing the wheel as well. So many different, instances where, one company will create some scripts, another company will create some scripts. They'll do exactly the same thing. So by pooling those resources, you're expanding that team who's going to maintain those modules, support and enhance as well. So yeah, by contributing back, you've also got other people contributing back. You're widening the development team, if you like, if you're using these tools in house. So that's another great benefit.
And it's funny because the whole thing that got me into PnP, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic initiative, was that I'd started creating a provisioning framework, and I probably got 3/4 of the way completely custom off the back. I had a few guys I was working with internally because it made sense what we were doing, and I found the PnP and I stopped because I saw what was in there. I saw A, how good it was, B, I was like, actually, I'm probably ahead in some areas and behind in others, but I just ditched the whole thing because it didn't quite fit in with the same way that PnP, so it wasn't something I could merge back in on there, and started using that. And I think one of the big reasons was I saw the names involved there, and I saw that their expertise was around, and I knew what I could learn from that. And I think knowing that these ones, you can get absolute experts and you can learn from the way they do things and get from that. So another reason to get involved is to be able to learn from great people who've been doing this for a while, who really understand this. You can go out and see the way they do things and and learn from it.
Yeah, I think everybody had started doing, scripts. I always think of,
I've got one on my GitHub. It's still there. I did the same thing as Kev. I went along and I went, I've built all this, wrote lots of code and used it, and then saw PnP and just stopped. But I've left it up there.
And everybody, every company that was going out and provisioning stuff and building stuff, the whole point is to be repeatable, to be able to have that repeatability. But we were all doing exactly the same thing, trying to achieve the same thing. And I think that's where what you said, Gary, an open source project has to have objectives. What are we actually trying to achieve? And if it's a shared objective across multiple people, multiple organizations, you're always going to get people who are going to contribute, because they're always going to realize the benefits of, what a massive development team can actually deliver, rather than each individual writing our own code, writing our own XML definitions, JSON definitions, and then actually going, somebody's done it better.
Yeah, and these open source projects as well advance other projects. You could look at, being maintainer of Office 365 CLI, would the CLI exist if it wasn't for PnP PowerShell? You could argue no, because it's the same concept, but the CLI has a different approach and different goals. Where PnP PowerShell was based on a SharePoint point of view originally, and obviously that's changed. CLI was, no, we're going to go Office 365, we're going to go all the services, but actually we're going to work cross-platform as well. So that's another slightly different goal, and it's just different ways of attacking problems that we have.
And I think it's steered Microsoft as well. Then I think there's huge amounts of open source projects that have steered the way that Microsoft's created their core product. The engineering team are getting involved. People like Vesa getting involved in these open source projects, and it is pushing what is the priority on the internal engineering as well, which is absolutely fantastic.
I think it makes for a better speed of delivery as well. When you look at these projects, as you say, if the SharePoint PnP solution hadn't taken off the way it did, we probably wouldn't be in this open source environment. Microsoft may have not bought GitHub, you know, they may have just gone, actually, we still don't see the benefit of it. But seeing the speed with which it was adopted, the volume of people who were contributing.
I would say Scott Guthrie and Scott Hanson may argue they possibly had something to do with it as well as pushing the open source rather than just PnP. But it certainly helped.
I think it certainly helped in terms of the perception. You know, when I remember going into clients and saying, right, well, we're going to use the Office PnP, and they went, what is that? And you know, why should we trust it?
Yeah.
You know, and it's those sorts of things that now there's not so much of a question, because you go into organizations now and they're already using it. It's already the default place to go to say, rather than Googling and pulling down some lines of code and then trying to work out how to use them, actually, I'm going to pull down a full solution that I know I can update in the future, and it's got lots of capabilities all in one place.
I do think what the PnP initiative's done is show Microsoft that other areas of Microsoft, this is how you engage. This is how you engage with people. You get people. You don't tell people. You don't look at what they've done and steal it and say that's open source. Let's take a copy of that and do our own version of it. You go and talk to people. You help engage with them. You share what's going on there. Sharing is caring is absolutely the way. And I think that starts to go to other things. I think the graph, you look at that, initially they were a little bit doing things their own way, and they've reached out as Jeremy Fakes joined them and reached out to people to guide what it is that goes in there, and I think that's been a real positive.
Yeah, there's very little that the PnP kind of organization, if you want to call it, doesn't cover. It's moving into so many different areas. So we've got PowerShell, we've got CLI, we've got sharing is caring initiative of helping people get into open source. You've got Mark Anderson and his docs repository as well. It's everywhere, and it is seen as the, like you say, the way to do community engagement, and PnP is very much standalone in this as a bit of a beacon, really, to say, look what we can do. Because let's take there's the PnP generator for SharePoint Framework. You can use the SharePoint Framework generator that gets released by Microsoft, because that's still closed source, even though it's using open source technologies. But then PnP have taken that and gone, hang on, we're going to create our own variation of the generator and make that open source. And you find so many extra features in there that then you can take as an organization and amend it to your own needs, which is fantastic. And it's those kind of initiatives that take what even Microsoft give us and then really push it forward as well. So yeah.
And I would say, for those listening who maybe don't know everything we're talking about, what is the PnP, who is Mark Anderson and others, we'll put lots of links to all these great initiatives out there so you can find out more, and highly recommend getting more involved on it. I think let's move on to the second part about how you can get involved. And I think, Al, you raised the point there that raising issues is one of them, is where you see things in an open source project, especially, for example, our etiquette of Microsoft 365. If you see something's missing there, or you've got a good idea, then you can go into the GitHub, very easily create a GitHub account, and you can raise your issues within that. The next thing really is actually getting involved in contributing back. So I just want to give a little bit of a summary for people on what it means, some of the sort of terminology you see within GitHub. So for those watching the video, we'll share on there. For those just listening, I'm going to try and talk through as much as possible. And hopefully Al and Gary will keep me honest on that one. But once you register, you get your own profile, and you will be able to create your own repository. So if you've got that dodgy framework that you've created yourself that's sat on a computer, you know what, at very least put that up there, put your old stuff up there, have a look at it, rather than just keeping it there. Share that, because there may be something that's interesting in there, and at very least you've got a backup of there, because there's probably one tiny tidbit that may not be in other areas that could be useful to someone, or could be useful to you later, and you may forget to back that up at some point. So get it up into your repository, and that's effectively like your projects within there. Now within
Yeah,
each of those projects,
there is a very good reason to do that as well. If you've got code and you just put that up there, even if it's just code that you've written, you don't expect anyone else to use. If someone asks you in the future, you can just send them a link, and you don't have
Really
to
good point,
explain
yeah.
much. You just say, "Here's the code. You can go take a look," and then that's how things kind of, carry on.
And it can do to a specific file within there as well, can't it? So you can go straight to that. So even if you're not contributing, get on there, create a repo and put your pieces on there. Now, the next step is if you want to contribute, you'll probably go and know about a repo, or you'll be searching for a repo such as the Office Dev PNP, or what's that other dodgy one, the CLI, Office 365 CLI on there.
How dare you.
And once you find that, you can clone that. So you can jump to that. I'm going to, for those following along the screen, I'm just going to bring up the grey hat beards, and we have our M365 etiquette. And you can take a copy of that. So sorry, not clone. I've got to make sure I get the right terminology. What you want to do is fork it, which is basically taking a copy of that and moving it into your own profile, and then you can work on it. So you're taking that remote copy into your profile in GitHub, and then from there you clone that down and you can start working it. And that's when you start going on and making your changes locally. You can publish that back up into your repo, work through different elements, find the different pieces. One of the things, the issues we're looking at the moment is creating some scenarios for the etiquette. So things like, I know I published on LinkedIn, mentioned the first half about doing an online workshop. You can actually, we've created an issue, Al, on there about creating a scenario for working on those workshops, or a workshop, as you appear to have up there. I've just noticed.
Yeah, you can raise an issue against my typos if you want. That's
an
fine.
Issue for an issue. Yeah, absolutely. But raise an issue and discuss it with the owners. We'll come to that with Gary in a minute, and then work on it on your own PC, your own laptop, maybe a Mac if you're that way inclined. And then you publish that back up into your repo. And once you've got it to a point where you're happy with it, you then submit that back through something called a pull request. So you will pull from your fork back into the main repository, probably into a dev area called a branch. You'll probably merge that back into a branch there, and that pull request will send an update to someone like Gary, who's looking after that repository, and they will review that, look at what it is, make sure they're happy with it, maybe give a bit of response back. I know when I submitted something to the PNP PowerShell, I had some nice unit tests in there, but it required 2 different site collections, and at the time they only had a single site collection. So there's conversations, there's discussion, which is very open. Anyone can plow into that and give their own thoughts and view on there. And then finally, once you've got everyone happy with that gets merged back into the master branch, and it's available to everyone at that point. So that is a process. Getting your own repository, forking a copy of the repository that you're working on, cloning that to your machine where you work on it, and then submitting your changes back as a pull request. It's fairly close cycle of things that you can do within there. Now, if you're just listening to that, and even if you're just following on, that has probably slipped out your head completely and you can't remember of it. And I think, Gary, there's one great initiative about learning of that that David Warner II works on.
So there's the PNP Sharing is Caring initiative, and this is it's not specific to any repository. This is to help you get to grips with the process that Kevin has just highlighted of how to get started and contribute to a repository. So there's David Warner and Hugo Bernier as well. So David's in the States, I think Hugo's in Canada, but they run targeted sessions. You can sign up, you can register, and they will basically hold these sessions and go through some of these basics with you against a repository that they've just built. It's a bit of a sandpit. So you can get used to going through that process before you start actually contributing to a live project. Look search for PNP Sharing is Caring, and you'll be able to find the website.
Yeah, we'll put the links in the show notes there. And Obviously we are all at CPS, and we've got a snippets area because we're trying to get people to do things the right way, and to be able to follow the right patterns and practices internally. And obviously there's some great stuff out there, but there's some specific for us, especially in the project space. And we had our first fork and pull request back into that from Mr. Lester Lovelock. I'll give him a shout out there, who's not a developer. I don't think he'd be offended at me saying, but he took on the thing. He's downloaded Git, he's got VS Code, and he's contributed some PowerShell back in there. So it is worth saying, this is not just plain developers, whether you're doing scripting and PowerShell or whether you just want to get involved in the etiquette and it's just about documentation. This is not just a developer thing.
I think that's really important. It isn't developers, it's users, it's anybody who uses the content. You know, there are those different levels of contribution. You don't need to understand what forking and cloning is. You can still use the tools and you can still submit issues. You could still contribute. That is just as important as actually being able to use the code.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's part of it as well, is that there's loads of resources out there of how to help you get started, but there is that kind of doing something is better than doing nothing, and going through that process, because you're going to learn. Don't be fearful of, you know, quotes, getting something wrong. You know, the community that we've built up over the years, so the SharePoint community, which has gone into Office 365, has been around for a hell of a long time, and you know, it's a really helpful community, and it always has been, and that has moved into online as well. You can you can definitely feel that when you're contributing to a PMP repository, for example. You know, everyone is trying to help each other. Everyone knows that by working together, we're going to make the world a bit of a better place, and it's going to enhance all of the things that we're able to do. So yeah, don't be afraid of doing that. You know, as a maintainer, my job is to not necessarily, you know, manage the code. It's making sure that we've got a community there. We've got a community that is going to help. That's not just the maintainers, but also people who are contributing to it regularly as well. You know, there's different people out there that can help you. So by getting out there, creating issues, creating pull requests, going through that process, and being open about it. You know, yeah, if you've made a mistake, then you know we're not pointing fingers. We're just helping you to get to the end goal, which would be, you know, we want to make sure that when we're merging code and new documents into the CLI, that it's right, and it's right first time. And it might take us a few goes to get there, but that's fine, because as you go through that stage, the next time you'll know what to look out for. And from my side as well, if those things keep repeating, then I'm looking at our processes and saying, are our processes helping people to contribute? Is it difficult to contribute? Have what we've done been a factor in that? And then we can reduce those blockers and make things a lot easier. So yeah, it's an interesting. I think most people, when they see GitHub and repositories, they go, "Oh, it's all about the code," and it is, but half of it isn't. I don't spend all of my time looking at code. I spend most of my time looking at the issues list, making sure we've got work there available for people to pick up. And advancing where we're going to go. Where's the project going to go next? What new features should we be looking at?
And I think going back to David Warner, I think he's, and I think he is a developer. He certainly does codes and things on there. But I know him as the person from the PMP calls who takes screenshots of that and shares it, so it's easier for those who couldn't attend to kind of pick up the main points. And then the sharing is caring. You know, none of those are explicitly code based, but he's found a fantastic role getting involved there with that. So you don't have to be the best developer. You don't just have to be the one contributing to that to make it a worthwhile contribution. So
and that's definitely the thing as well, is that, you know, I'm not saying I'm the best developer in the world. No, I can write code and that's fine. There's definitely better people out there than myself. But it's this learning thing, isn't it? You can only get better.
For those not on video, apologies for Alan and I nodding.
Yeah, my code isn't that bad. Come on.
It's not as bad as mine, so that's fine.
Yeah, and I'm not allowed to code anymore, so that's fine.
But actually, coming back to what you said really early on, Al, was about, maybe you're not doing stuff in your day to day, and actually you want to learn new skills and commit to an open source project. Is for the last week I've been writing nothing but documents, because I'm at a part of a project where I'm doing a lot of assessment, and I could get to later on in the evening and just go, I can write a little bit of code now, just to kind of keep my skills up, which is good.
And I think I don't do much coding, but when I do get a little bit of a chance to write something, the satisfaction of writing code and making something work is really good. And as you say, if you might be working on a project that doesn't give you the opportunity to maybe use the technology you want to work with in the future, doesn't necessarily, as you say, writing documents doesn't give you the satisfaction of actually coding. Open source projects give you the opportunity to actually contribute and get that little dopamine hit of, ding, I've done something, I've achieved something, I've made something work. But by
give
actually
you a focus and a reason to try something out, not
absolutely.
just I'm going to play with this, I'm going to run the getting started. It gives you an actual goal for things, which pushes you on a bit more.
And if you do want to, take your career in a different direction, it gives you the opportunity to participate and to be able to demonstrate things that maybe you don't have the opportunity to do in your day-to-day job. So it does give you that, going back to that original, what are the benefits? Well, if you want to move in a different direction, to be able to demonstrate through an open source project that you've contributed, you've made things work using a technology that maybe you're not using day to day, but a technology you want to get into, it's a perfect example of how you can go, actually, this is validated by my peers. This is actually in use, and I can demonstrate this to you.
And I've been saying this, my brother, he wanted to move more into development. He does home automation and things. And I said to him, get involved, go and find an open source project, get involved and start doing things there, because you will learn from things there. And he, I can't remember which one he picked up on, but he did start doing bits there, and it's helped him move more into C# and learn and practice from that, which has been great. And then another friend who wanted to become a product manager. He kind of worked on the non-technical side and wanted to become more of he'd done a little bit of project management, but really wanted to go into the kind of tech product manager. I said, great, go and find an open source project, become someone who starts reviewing things there, and just, you will be crying out for people who want to be doing coding and just want someone to help manage and keep things ticking along. Get involved in that. Put it on your CV, and there is your change of career. Absolutely.
It's a very good point. It's like what I was saying, is that maintaining a repo is not about the code. Product management really does come into that. We have issues in the CLI that are already looking at V3. So we're looking at things that we can introduce that maybe things that we couldn't do with the current version, because we might break some current functionality, but things that we want to have on the roadmap. Say, how do we get to that point? What changes do we need to make? If we have to make breaking changes, what is the impact of that going to be on our current users? And you have to think of that. There's lots of things that you'd love to do, but you have to sit back and say, where's the value? And by doing this, are we actually going to break things and make things worse? So there is a lot of that, and that's constantly going backwards and forwards, getting feedback. Going back to the issues list, we put discussions on there as well to say, actually, we're looking at this. Would anyone be interested? And then you get people that can see that, because it's open and it's transparent. They can contribute to that discussion. Recently, a perfect example is we introduced the SPFX Doctor to the CLI. That started off as a discussion, and actually that got posted through our Twitter account, and we had all sorts of MVPs having discussions on that, and within a week it was in the beta release, because we knew it had value. We knew that people would use it. So, okay, great, we've discussed it in the open, we've found the value, let's go and do it. There's lots of things that you can work on, but whether they're going to give value or not.
I do think you should have discussed that with Belair's first before you stole his name.
Well, if Bill's listening, he needs to start looking at the repos.
Yeah. So is Gary, is there anything else? So we've covered quite a few things, but to be a good contributor, is there anything particular that's any other tips you'd mention?
Yeah, so definitely from from the maintainer side, this is something that we do in our spare times. We like to contribute and do the work, but actually as contributors, you can work in a particular way that makes our life a little bit easier. So things like don't just work on something. Don't go to an open source project and see something and just go, I'm going to write some code to add some kind of functionality, because you've just done that off your own back. You've not had a discussion. You don't know whether what you're doing is, whether what you're trying to do is in line with the goal of that project. First, if you have that idea, open an issue and just say, I've got this idea. Is this something that you'd be interested in first? Do that, because you get the engagement from the maintainers, and they can, pretty much give the rubber stamp, if you like, to say, yeah, that'd be great if you could do that. We're happy for you to go and work on it. Because one thing that we'd hate to do is for someone to go away, do lots of work, and give us a pull request that we're just not going to accept for whatever reason. And that can happen. And that's what we don't want. We don't want to upset people like that. So create an issue.
And I think it's not a natural thing to do that, but because it's called an issue, it sounds like you're complaining about something, and it's not that. That is the way that you communicate.
Yeah, it's the terminology is pretty bad, to be honest, for me. But yeah, think of the issue list as a task list or a place to have a discussion as well. It's the best way to kind of start.
It's the backlog, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's ever changing. So that issues list. What we do in the CLI is we use labels. So we've got labels for issues that are in progress, so you can see that they're actively being worked on, they're assigned to people, but different types of issues as well. So we've got enhancements, we've got new feature requests, we've got labels in there for help wanted. So look for the issues that are tagged as help wanted first, because those are the ones that are available. Secondary to that is if you're contributing for the first time to this repository, we also tag certain issues with good first issue as well, and they are ones that we feel are good for people who are going through that first process to take those up first, and we leave the more advanced ones for maybe contributors that have been doing this for a while, for those to pick up. But it's the progression, isn't it? You start on the good first issues, you then progress to the more complex ones as you understand the code base more, and you understand what is required on you when you contribute new code to get through the pull request review.
So a good first issue is something that for people who are just getting started with it, that would be a good issue for them to start solving. And if you're interested, drop a comment on there to say, I'd love to look at this. I'll start taking a look.
Just put your hand up, kind of virtually put your hand up, put a message in there and say, I'd love to take this on. We'll pick that up and assign it to you. We see a lot of people use app mentions quite a lot for that. You don't have to. As a maintainer of the project, I see every time someone puts a message on there, we see them. So you can we can pick those up, and we can just give those to you for you to work on. Very first thing I'd say, pick up an issue first. Don't work without an issue. Would be my kind of the first tip. Read the documentation as well that's there. If there are any gaps, then please say. Raise an issue. Say, actually, I've just started and this wasn't as I didn't understand this step, or maybe I should explain it, or this was difficult. Because then we can make changes on our side.
And if you don't get to finish it off, then you don't get to finish it off. This isn't tracking milestones at work. So maybe mention you don't think you're going to finish it off, but Don't worry about it. Sorry,
So,
Uncle.
yeah.
I was going to say, quick question, Gary. If you put your hand up for an issue, do you give the advice around how to validate and test that resolution, that issue, the fix, whatever it is that you're doing? Because obviously, with the one of the key benefits that we all see is actually we trust what's in open source repos. So how do you suggest people sort of address the testing of their fixes?
So we, for the CLI, it's kind of code based mostly. So we've got docs already in the repository, which will say, if you're submitting a new command, for example, then we expect the command code itself, the bit that actually does the work, a test file. So we use automated testing. So you need to provide automated tests. We actually have an automated process that when you submit a pull request, it will run the tests that you've written, and it will give us a percentage of the code coverage, which currently is 100%. If you push some code, if you push some code and it reduces it, then it's rejected basically.
You get a virtual face slap.
Kind of, yeah, but it's it might be 99.8 that's dropped. It might be just the else of an if statement that's not covered. But that's how we deal with that. But on top of that as well, we also ask for documentation. We ask for markdown files to be created that describes the command that you've just created, so that can go into our website, and then people can see the documentation when it gets released.
And I guess all of these are things that you need to do in order for your changes to be accepted. So making sure that you've covered off all of the expectations, vitally important, so that your changes can be accepted in.
Yes, and like I said, that goes back to the docs. And if you're working with a repository that it's not that clear, then ask the question. Simply ask the question. Put the question back to the maintainers for them to give an answer. And this is one of the things that I'm really conscious of, is that I want to make the CLI as easy as possible for people to contribute to, so they have all the information available to them, that you don't have to reach out, because it's obvious of what's required of you as a contributor. But then if there's things that you're struggling with, or you're doing you're not so great with the Git commands, things like that, just ask. We're more than happy to help and help you get through that process. And doing it in the open, you're going to get other people helping you out, contributors that have done many contributions, not just the maintainers as well. So one thing, because picking up a single issue and working on that issue as well, is your pull request is then based just on that. It's just that one issue that you're working on. It might be a new command, okay, and then you might say, oh, I want to do a bug fix as well. I can do a bug fix, but don't do them together. So we have one
small discrete changes that are easy to manage, and
exactly. We would rather have 5 pull requests that each have a line change in them than one pull request with 5 lines, for example, if they're fixing different things.
So I think we're probably getting near to the end of the time. I think if I was going to summarize what you're saying, Gary, there, get involved, communicate, use the issues to talk to people and say what you're getting up to. Be nice. I think realize that people are doing this in their own time. Put in there, be pleasant and engaging, and listen to the feedback, and try and stay focused with what you said you're doing. Don't try and go too broadly.
Definitely just stick to the task in hand. Don't get distracted by other things that you might want to do as well. Work on that single issue, get that submitted, and then just move on to the next one. I think one of the things is as well, it is open source, it's open, it's in the public domain. If you go and ask to work on a particular issue, and for whatever reason, you just can't spare the time, we all have different things going on in our lives. If you can't work on it, just say, look, I've not got the time. I'd rather someone else pick this up. That is absolutely fine. You know, we thank you for actually coming and engaging in the first place, for maybe thinking that you know, contributing to our project. Anyone who wants to do anything, we are completely grateful for you to spend your free time to do this. But we also don't expect you to to spend hours and hours of what you maybe don't have. Other things have to come first.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you. I think it was really good to hear that that side of the fence as well, the maintaining and picking up from there. I think we will wrap up there for this week. We will be a little bit late publishing, but hopefully Monday morning, as everyone sits there working from home, wants a bit of a voice in the background, hopefully we can be that voice. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Same time, 2 weeks' time. I've been Gray.
I've been Hat.
I've been Beard.
Thanks very much. Speak to you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Grey Hat Beard podcast. The song Drink Up My Mateys was brought to you by Black Bones under a non-commercial attribution license.